Hello everyone, welcome to the next session of SAP Security. In this session we are going to discuss about call transaction. First of all, we need to understand it is not quite common that you will be using this functionality in our SAP system. Meaning to say, it's quite rare that you will be playing around with this call transaction functionality. That means you need to maintain these functionalities. Why do we use this call transaction functionalities? As we know, we also seen in our previous exercise, there are many transactions which you can call from a different transaction. For example, we went to notification. From notification you can switch it service order. Same like this, we have a standard SAP transaction. You can call different transaction from specific transaction using their menus and other functionalities. So for this we use a statement in ABAP code which is called call transaction. So basically we can also use this call transaction codes, ABAP codes, and create our own program and call different transaction within this program. So it is possible that the s_check is not performed under this call transactions. Using the transaction code SE97, we can add the call transaction. We can add mandatory check for the object s_t code for the transaction which is called. Let's say I created a program which has a call transaction. I am going to call a transaction called VA01 within the custom program. Once I run this program, I say okay, I call transaction VA01, so it will directly go to the transaction VA01. Whether it will check for s_t code, it may not check in these cases because you are anyway calling from a different program. So what we can do, using the transaction code SE97, we can maintain this call transaction for each transaction code, so that when you run this specific program, you are calling a transaction code, then it will check for this object s_t code, so that we can be sure that authorization concept is consistent with the program which is being used. So the maintenance of this will be done in SE97. For this maintenance, and the settings are configured in the transaction code SE97, and these are saved in the table called TCD couples. So when you go to the transaction code SE97, then you will have a menu like this. So you put any transaction code. Let's say for example here we have IW51. You put a transaction code here and execute, then you get output like this. Here you can see message type yes, that means this is checked, check indicator yes, and message type X means this is been checked, and this are also been checked, but there is no message type, it is blank, so it's not valid. But this is checked. X means it's a warning. So we have different message types. We will see that how does the message type work. So we can configure it like this. We can add additional transaction. So in this case is now we are talking about the standard transactions. In a standard transaction, it's very rare that we will be playing around with this SE97. This all comes into picture when we are using custom developed program. Okay, let's assume that I created a custom program. This program transaction code is set_user. So what I am trying to do in this program, this is the T code for example, okay, and program name is something else. Program name is set user change. We have a program like this. In this program, what I am trying to do, I will do a call transaction in this program. So inside this program, I will do a call transaction SU01, and do something. Okay, we are doing some activity. Let's assume I am doing some activity inside this program. So I am calling this transaction SU01 from this transaction code. So this may not check the object S underscore T code. Then you have the authorization object called TCD equal to SU01. Generally, when you run SU01 directly, you need to have this object S underscore T code TCD SU01. In this case, it may not check this authorization object. It directly you are calling SU01. If you run this transaction, even though you do not have this authorization object, it directly gets into your SU01 program, the change program. And let's assume that using this program I am trying to do some changes, and you can do the changes. In our example, then maybe you may be thinking, okay, we have additional authorization. What happens to all the authorization object like S underscore AGR underscore user, this kind of authorization object? Yes, it will still check this authorization objects depending on the situation what you are trying to do. Maybe in some another transaction we may not have this many authorization object. That it may be also possible that this authorization object is given for a different context. Let's say in our case SU01 and PFCG use almost the same authorization objects. As if you've seen this S underscore AGR underscore user, we are also using it in PFCG to assign users in PFCG. So that scenario you have S underscore T code TCD is equal to PFCG, and all other objects also available for a different context of using PFCG, not using SU01. So you do not have S underscore T code, but you still have the object for different usage. If I use this program and call SU01, I can get into SU01's user maintenance and do all the changes, since I have all other authorization which is assigned to this PFCG requirement. Like this we can trick the whole SAP system. If this is the case, then our authorization concept become invalid. So that's the reason we have this transaction code SE97. Let's say if I go to SE97, in this case, in our case, what we will be doing is we will go to SE97, we will put this transaction code here and execute, which will not anyway have anything here. Then we will add this transaction code here, and then we will specify check indicator yes and the message type appropriate message type. So once you have this one, then it will check for this authorization objects. So unless this user have authorization object S underscore T code SU01 into their user profile, they cannot move further. That's again depends on the configuration. We will see that how does that work. That means it's going to check for the specific authorization object. That is the use. This comes into very big discussion when you are discussing about security of highly sensitive business process. So it is possible that you have a lot of Z transaction or Y transaction or custom transactions which is calling different sensitive programs like this. So how do we control that? Let's say we have a concept called segregation of duty for all the standard transaction. We defined everything and you are keep monitoring this one. We believe everything is working fine, but if you still wanted to do something wrong, we can create an Z transaction and put it in the system and run all the transaction whatever you required. So it's a loophole. For that reason, we will specify this SE97 mandatory to all the custom transaction code if this specific program or the transaction code have call transaction inside this program. So this is the message type which we seen. If you see in our previous slide, we have this message type. Okay, the first option is I. This is information. It gives you only the information. However, actually we cannot use this if you are calling a transaction. Anyway, it's going to follow the call transaction even though if you specify its informations. Next one is E. It's an error message. It gives an error message and remains in the transaction cursor in input ready field. That is, only possible if an input ready field is exist, otherwise it will give you a short dump. Let's say if you submit to a program, or if you call a transaction code and submit some values, then it will check this authorization objects. If it is not available, then it will give you a short dump. So that means you will not call the SU01 screen itself, so it will not give you the screen. In the program, we will call this program and you will submit some variables inside. So if you do not have this authorization, it will directly, it cannot put in the variables inside, then it will give you a short dump. And the next one is A. This terminates a message and returns to easy access menu. What it will do is it will give you a warning message, it will give you a dialog message and saying that okay, you are not authorized to do for this specific activity what you are going to do. We have another ones which is called WX, otherwise it is just left blank. This is warning. This message returns the easy access menu. This is the most used one, therefore it's generally the default. It will give you a warning message that you cannot carry out further, and it will also stays in the specific menu. So we can see in the system, then we will understand this. Okay, let's go to the transaction SE97. Let's take any transaction code, let's say VA01, and you execute. This is the transaction code it will be calling, and you have the check indicator and you have the message type. When you select here, you can specify the message type. And this information is stored in the table called TCD couple. Then go to the table TCD couples, and if you go here, then let's say VA01, this is the calling transaction. So these are all the call transaction within the VA01. As I said, we will not be doing this mainly for SAP standard transaction until unless you have some nodes, some security nodes which is read by SAP saying that okay, we have a problem with this particular transaction code, this needs to be enabled for this checking or something like this. Until unless you have some requirement like this, we will not be doing this, but we will be doing this specially for custom transaction code. As I said, the custom transaction code is quite important that you can skip. So the custom transaction code will be a loophole if you have your security policies. So if you want to avoid that, then we can have this kind of check for your custom transaction code, so that if the actual transaction code is available for this user, then only he can run this custom transaction code as well. Especially if you, let's say if you are an auditor, then this will be very useful, because I know in my experience, let's say to overcome lot of issues, security issues and auditing issues, people have the tendency to create the custom transaction code where you do not have this standard authorization check and overcome all these problems. So this will be also a very key point on the security audit related things when for a secured environment. Okay, with this we are coming to the end of this session. Thank you very much for listening. I will see you in the next session. Bye bye.